The Existential Crisis Hotline. The Existential Crisis Hotline. The Existential Crisis Hotline. The Existential Crisis Hotline. The Existential Crisis Hotline.
Hey everybody. Oh, that's weird. My camera's kind of off. There we go. All right. If you're in the chat, can you let me know if the sound is good? I had kind of a technical issue. I think my headphones broke because like the cord here is kind of like weird. It's these weird ones where they're actually nice headphones, but you have to like plug in the cable here. Hey, Sandra. It's like you have to plug it in here and then you can unplug it. But then the wire's obviously like busted there because like it's just, flimsy rubber. So I can't hear anything, which is not a big deal when I'm just talking. But if we listen to anything, I won't be able to hear it. So I was going to very quickly see if I can figure that out. And I'm going to just check real quick and see if I can. I think this might work. Okay, I'm going to try something here. I'm just going to play something random on YouTube real quick and see if I can hear it. Because I'm assuming you guys will be able to hear it, but I'll see if I can hear it. Okay, aliens are simulating our reality. Let's see.
So basically the rule of thumb in video games for...
I'm assuming you guys could hear that. I could hear it, which is pretty cool. Okay, so I'm going to use my wireless headphones. And it's got a 90% charge, so hopefully that'll work. Actually, I don't really have that much audio planned for tonight, but you never know. You never know what might happen. Hold on a second. I guess the camera's okay. It's just kind of tilted down a little bit. No, I think it's just because I have my mic raised up, so it seems weird. Come on. There we go. All right, cool. All right, thanks, Sandro. Okay, so I was thinking about what we would talk about today, and for some reason, like the Matrix kind of popped into my head. The Matrix and like the people who created the Matrix, meaning the movie. And then I was thinking about a story about the creators of the Matrix, which will make sense in a moment when I show you. Some of this stuff you might have already heard. But then that connects to the concept of BDSM and transgenderism. And then I was thinking about Marquis de Sade, who was a writer back in like the 1700s. There's a really great explanation of de Sade, or I guess they just call him Sade, in Prometheus and Atlas from Jason Giorgiani, which is where I kind of started looking at some of these points because we had read about him when I was in school. I don't know why. I have a memory of learning about Marquis de Sade back in like middle school. I don't know why. I guess because somebody had said the word sadism, and then that's where they explained it came from. But didn't get a lot of context for it. But anyways, let me switch over here. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about BDSM because, I don't know, kids might watch this at some point. But it was crazy because I'm not going to do it, but just to kind of explain, like when I was looking at the BDSM article to kind of give some context about it, I'm not going to do it. But if I hover over any of these blue words, it's like a very graphic picture. I mean, like full nudity. Like I was like, what the fuck? So that's kind of weird. So I'm going to be careful not to do that. But I just want to explain the context of what it is. And this will make sense as I go why I'm even talking about this. But Marquis de Sade, or in other words, also known as Donatien Alphonse Francois Marquis de Sade. He was a writer, a political activist, and he wrote libertine novels. He was imprisoned for sex crimes, blasphemy, and pornography, apparently. He was born into a noble family. He was an officer in the 7 Years' War. Wow, noble family dating back 13th century. So, like, they were, like, several hundred years noble family. During the Reign of Terror, he was imprisoned for moderatism, which is weird, considering his views seem rather extreme. But narrowly escaped the guillotine. Was rearrested for his pornographic novels in 1801. I wonder if that was at the time of Napoleon, because Napoleon came into power pretty soon after the French Revolution, if I'm not mistaken. French Revolution ended in 1799. And let's see. That whole history is very fascinating. Honestly, I'd recommend reading Prometheus and Atlas. There's so much like philosophy and history in it. It's pretty interesting. But he goes through like a whole history of the French Revolution in there. I was trying to see if when did Napoleon come to power? Oops. Napoleon. Must have been the 1800s. Emperor from 1804 until 1814, and then a brief restoration in 1815. So you can see it kind of overlapping some of this. But I wanted to get to the part, there's like a lot of relatively graphic stuff in here, but really, Giorgiani gives the best description of all of it in the book, but there's a few little points in here that describe some of the points I wanted to make, if I can get there. Okay, starting with Albert Camus. So these are different writers that talked about Sade. Argued that Sade placed the sex drive at the center of his thought. The sex drive is a natural but a blind force that dominates man. The overthrow in 1792 of a king ruling by divine right necessarily involved the abandonment of a system of law and morals sanctioned by God and sovereign. Isn't that interesting? So if you got rid of the king who was ruling with divine right, that's like a rejection of God and morality, or at least morals sanctioned by God. In its place, Sade advocated absolute moral license, allowing the passions to rule. And I think this little description here in the next paragraph fits pretty closely with how Giorgiani describes it in that other book I was talking about. It says, if satisfaction of the passions involves crimes such as murder, then this accords with the laws of nature, for destruction is necessary for creation. And I scrolled up in the chat and I was seeing the messages from last night. I'm like, what the hell? And like Giorgiani goes a little more into more detail in Prometheus and Atlas, but basically he starts back at like Descartes and goes from Descartes to Hegel and then eventually French Revolution, and kind of shows how philosophy evolved in people's thinking, and I talked about this I think on another stream too, but Descartes basically proposed the dualism between mind and matter, and that basically mind doesn't really have an effect on matter. That was kind of the split that was created from Cartesian philosophy. So they were still dealing with this concept even in the time of, obviously, a few hundred years later. And, like I said, Giorgiani goes into it in more detail, but basically the point of what he argues is that Sod was looking at it from the perspective of, nature, since there is no God, so to speak, the only God is the material natural reality. And if you looked at natural phenomenon, there's like earthquakes, there's all kinds of destructive things that happen that have no sense of right and wrong to them. And he said if destruction was because there's no moral law from God, so therefore if something can happen in nature, then it can't be against natural law, because if it was literally against natural law, it wouldn't even be allowed to happen in nature. And since nature is destructive, then doing destructive things doesn't really matter. It's not wrong to do. So that was kind of like how he formed the philosophy. And it says, okay, so if satisfaction of the passions involves crimes such as murder, then this accords with the laws of nature, for destruction is necessary for creation. But if murder is licensed, all are at risk of being murdered. Therefore, absolute freedom must entail the struggle to dominate. So it wasn't like a enforced freedom, it was like a moral freedom. Like there's really no right and wrong. You can do whatever you want. But he recognized, obviously then, people are going to do whatever they want. And therefore, the only way to get what you want would be to dominate everybody. So he says he advocated, according to Camus, he advocated freedom of desire for the few, which required the enslavement of the majority. So, ironically, the few noble people who had the ability to enslave everybody, they had the right to do it because that was just what they could do. And it was their right to pursue their desires. Sod thus prefigured totalitarianism in the name of freedom. Phillips, whoever that is, they must have mentioned him before, states that Sod was greatly influenced by the materialism of La Mettrie and Holbach and by the determinism of Hume. According to this view, God does not exist, and man and the universe are nothing but matter which is infinitely broken down and reconfigured, never perishing. Free will is an illusion because everything has a cause which is determined by the materialist laws of nature. The character of libertines is therefore determined by nature, and it is pointless to punish them for something for which they are not morally responsible. Although it seems kind of hard to argue against punishment, because wouldn't that just be fitting into the desire to do whatever you want anyways? So it's like kind of a self-defeating argument. Like, hey, you can't punish me, you have no right to do that, but I have a right to do whatever I want, and I'm going to dominate you so I can do it, but you can't punish me. So it's obviously retarded. But Sod's libertines sometimes substitute nature for God, regarding it as a destructive force whose laws must be respected, but sometimes see nature as a rival to their own power. So, and I didn't read this part yet, but it looks kind of interesting. Lester Crocker argues that Sod was the first to construct a complete system of nihilism with all its implications, ramifications, and consequences. Sod believed morals are only human conventions, and that individuals have a right to ignore laws and moral precepts that are contrary to the laws of nature, and to pursue goals that are in accordance with nature. And this is where I think Giorgiani does a really good job of explaining the actual logical contradiction of all this, because he makes this point, and he goes into more detail than this, but it's like, okay, I actually don't have any free will because I'm a force that's just, like a chain reaction of a material universe. So if I have desires, I can't stop that anyways. And if I want to pursue them, that's just a natural thing to do. And it's just what it is. But there's this point, like Giorgiani points out, where it's like, it's hard for your mind to actually grasp that because you don't want to believe that you have no free will. Like, you want to still believe you have some kind of freedom of will. Like, it can't be all predetermined. It's hard you don't want to accept that. And so then he kind of saw it, apparently shifted to the point of, nature has a plan, and you have to figure out what that plan is and act in harmony with it. So you could act against it, but if everything was predetermined, you couldn't act against it. So it's just a self-defeating point. It makes no sense. Um, so I just thought that was an interesting point just to give some context on Sod. And although it's not directly related to sadism, it's obviously in the word. So if you look at BDSM, the S refers to sadism, I believe. Let's see. Actually, no, it stands for. No, yeah, it does. Okay, I don't know why I thought for a second it didn't. So BD is bondage and discipline. SM is sadism and masochism, right? So sadism is the inflicting of pain on other people. And so Marquis de Sade, like in his writings, went into like a lot of detail about all the ways in which you can get a lot of energy, mental energy, experiential energy within yourself by inflicting pain on other people and reasoning that it didn't really matter morally. It was okay to do. And basically, I've never read Sade, so I'm only interpreting from other things that I've written of his philosophy. But according to Giorgiani, he basically argued that, like the pleasure of having a good meal, something that makes you happy, is actually a lower form of pleasure, not lower as a judgment, but as like an actual experience than the experience of energy or whatever you get from it by inflicting pain on somebody. Like it's a more heightened experience actually. So that's why he was so interested in it. Okay. But essentially BDSM is, let's say, like a sexual practice between people, two people or multiple people that involves bondage. Oops, sorry, I did not mean to click on that. Bondage, discipline, dominance, submission, sadomasochism. And, I don't want to scroll down because it's kind of, not that I have a problem looking at things, but I don't want to just put that out there on the stream. But my point is, there's a lot of graphic pictures, so I don't want to just scroll through all of it. But there, when I was looking through it earlier, there was this point about, making this point that it really isn't so much about the sexual pleasure aspect as it is the experience of power and domination and the experience of submission and powerlessness. Okay, so that's, even though it's explored in a perhaps sexual way, there may not even be any actual sexual intercourse happening when you're doing these kind of things, right? So I'm bringing that in for a reason. Maybe it seems kind of random, but my whole point is to talk about the Matrix. And it's still kind of actually a side point anyways, because I just think it's really fascinating. But so I just wanted to make sure when I'm talking about these concepts, people are clear, anybody watching, what I'm actually talking about, because you may not have this context. Okay, so the Matrix. You've probably heard about the movie. You've probably seen it, I would assume. I'm just looking at some of the comments. I don't know what they're even talking about. The one about Kanye, I have no idea. Okay, seems like a random thing to say. So the Matrix movies, I was thinking about we could read through this because it's actually pretty cool. I've watched all the movies, but it'd be a nice little refresher because I haven't seen them in a long time. I saw the Matrix when it came out in the theater when I was in high school, and I thought it was a pretty cool movie. I didn't really care that much about it at the time. Like, it just seemed like a cool movie. But there's a lot of interesting ideas in it. And the reason I wanted to bring it up, so maybe I'll go through it first. I think I'll go through it first, because if I do the other stuff I want to show, it's going to go way off topic, and I probably won't come back to this. So I'll just go through this first. Let's see. So the first Matrix movie. So you've got Neo is located and freed from the Matrix. I guess this is assuming you've already seen the movies. So it's not a complete description of everything. It's just this person's like kind of interesting conclusions. So I'm just going to read through it. I haven't read it yet. Neo is located and freed from the Matrix, entering what we believe is the real world. A world decimated by machines, atmosphere clouded by humans, and intrinsic tunnels littered underground holding... What does it mean, intrinsic? That's weird. Underground holding various massive crafts used to hack into the Matrix. Okay. The movie is all about the journey of learning about the Matrix, which is in fact a large network computer system powered by the brains of humans. So I'm kind of following on our theme from like 2 nights ago where we talked about accelerationism. The characters we follow work between the real world and the Matrix. As these characters hack into the Matrix, they can be loaded into their own sandbox of code. This area allows the introduction of weapons and or items which they can load into the Matrix when ready. With this understanding, these characters' knowledge in the Matrix is infinite. They can be taught anything from fighting to hot wiring a car. Knowledge in the Matrix is just ones and zeros which can be hacked. As these characters jack into the Matrix, a set of programs in the Matrix known as agents are immediately after them. They are attempting to discover the entities responsible for hacking their system and eliminate them, much like the human body works to rid itself of disease. In this movie, we are introduced to the Oracle, one of the many important characters in this movie. An all-knowing program who tells our characters exactly what they need to hear. After some small talk, Neo leaves with a cookie from the Oracle, which sounds eerily familiar to browser cookies. Okay. He takes a bite, absorbing a tiny amount of code from the all-seeing Oracle. I don't even remember that part, actually. Him eating the cookie. Huh. Neo is under the impression via Morpheus that he is the One. The Oracle neither confirms nor denies this, and Neo cannot exhibit anything more than a regular human plugged into the system. Is he really the One? We don't learn this answer until the end of the movie, where Neo takes 8 bullets to the chest from an agent program. He's apparently dead in the Matrix, and a body without a mind cannot live, so we are led to believe he dies in the real world. However, this is the One whose Matrix counterpart finally realizes it, perhaps from the cookie from the Oracle and the kiss from Trinity, and awakes from death in the Matrix. With this new profound knowledge that the world is fake, Neo sees it for what it is, a bunch of computer code. The Matrix is fake, and Neo knows it now, going straight into fighting an agent, jumping into its body, killing it. We can infer from this exchange that Neo's Matrix code has overlapped with a Matrix program, which is crucial to understanding the future movies. Okay. So it doesn't really explain the whole movie, but I guess those are just some highlights. The Matrix Reloaded. I know I saw this and the third movie, but I really don't remember any of it. I remember certain parts, but not much. As this movie begins, we get to see Zion, which is initially depicted as an all-white organized realm. I don't remember that at all. I really don't remember that part. The last remaining human civilization in the real world, hidden deep underground, which the agents in the Matrix are destined to cover and destroy. We learn that minds that reject the Matrix are no longer viable sources for energy, which makes them useless for machines. The machines toss out these bodies for death, possibly unknown to the fact that Zion humans are saving these rejects, returning them to Zion. Okay. This is why Neo took the red pill in the first movie. It disrupted his real-world signal, tricking the Matrix into thinking he rejected the simulation he was being fed. Okay. This allowed our characters to find his rejected body in the real world and save it, as a body that hasn't moved isn't exactly usable. Back in the Matrix, Agent Smith, who was killed at the end of the first movie, has returned. However, he's not connected with the machine mainframe, which we can believe just makes him a rogue program. Oh, I don't remember picking up on that. Much like a virus, Smith begins replicating himself, taking over other programs, including the body of a real-world human jacked into the Matrix. This creates a massive problem as Agent Smith, who lives solely inside the Matrix, took over the consciousness, I'm assuming, of a human being. This body, when removed from the Matrix, will then carry it with the mind overwritten, which in this case is Agent Smith. The fear is now placed in the eyes of the viewer that Agent Smith is much like our human characters, able to have a spot in both the Matrix and the real world. Wow, I don't remember that either. It kind of makes sense now that I think about it, because I think in that movie he ends up fighting with someone like on one of the ships, so it probably makes sense. It's just been so long since I've seen it. Agent Smith has his own agenda. He just wants to watch the world burn, from killing Neo to destroying Zion and claiming every person inside the Matrix. He does not care about the ramifications for the minds connected. He just wants full control. He continues to replicate and encounters Neo, but numbers mean nothing to Neo. He continues to win. Once again, we meet the Oracle. This time she carries the news that Neo must meet the source of the Matrix, otherwise known as the Architect. Okay, I remember that scene, but that kind of blended in my mind into the first movie, so I didn't realize that's actually the second movie. This journey is not easy, which takes a good portion of the movie, as our characters fight and battle a new, smarter enemy who disobeys the laws even further that the Matrix once respected. Back at Zion, news is discovered that the machines are digging for Zion instead of blindly traveling millions of miles of tunnels. So now we have a threat of Zion being destroyed, the Matrix collapsing from a rogue program, and Bane, or Agent Smith, now walking the real world. Okay, yeah, I remember that character. Things seem bleak until we meet the Architect, and that encounter drops everything on our head of what we thought we knew. Okay. The Architect begins explaining that Neo is standing in the 6th iteration of the Matrix. This leads to a great understanding by Neo that he was either lied to or no one knew. The 6th iteration is unknown to the humans except for the One and the Architect. We begin to learn about the previous iterations of the Matrix, with the first iteration being a utopia, which failed miserably as an imperfect subject could not live in a perfect world without rejecting it. Kind of makes it sound like Genesis, right? The whole story of the Garden of Eden. Minds awoke and the batteries they were once enslaved for began collapsing. This led to the second iteration, where the Architect made the world imperfect, along with spawning a program to learn from humans who we discovered to be the Oracle. Okay. This iteration also failed because of a lack of choice, which the Oracle discovered. The AI responsible could not fathom a simulation where choices, perhaps invalid, could be allowed. The third iteration was born between the Oracle and Architect, giving humans, test subjects, the perception of choice at a near-conscious level. This worked 99% of humans, and the remaining percent was freed and would discover Zion. As an unlocked mind inside the Matrix would only increase the potential for catastrophic failure. This destroys an inkling of hope, as we learn Zion is nothing more than another machine-oriented control structure. The machines built it, know exactly where it is, and only choose to delay the inevitable for the perception of choice. Meanwhile, back with the Architect, Neo is given 2 doors, each carrying a choice. Well, hold on. I thought they said there was 6 iterations. Why they just skip over 4 or 5? Makes it seem like 3rd is like the current one. Okay, well, it's a minor detail, I guess. Door 1, Neo selects 23 people to free from Matrix to rebuild Zion after it's destroyed, and the Matrix is reborn into version 7. Door 2, Neo returns to the Matrix, which is collapsing and dying. This will result in the loss of lives of millions in both Zion and the Matrix, and extinction of the human species. As the Architect explains, the previous iterations of Neo have always reloaded the Matrix, as the survival of the species is more important than the life of his friends. With each reload, the Architect hoping for 100% acceptance into his fake simulated world. The 6th iteration of Neo does something different, though, and goes through the door, ending the species in order to save Trinity over love. It's interesting, semi-Christian adjacent ideas. So many dots are connected here, and we learn the prophecy isn't true, and this existence Neo has is one big lie in order to keep the minds enslaved chasing something. His entire life has done this pattern before, being awoken and free, trained and given the choice to relive the Matrix. As Neo saves Trinity and leaves the crumbling Matrix, he kills 5 Sentinels in the real world. Oh yeah, I remember that. He actually stops the Sentinels. With the destruction of machines in the real world, we're left wondering a lot of things. Oh yeah, exactly. How did he have those powers in the, quote, real world? Is the real world another Matrix? How can Neo affect objects in the real world? This explanation jumps all the way back to the end of the first movie when Neo enters Agent Smith's body. His Matrix brain code is ran directly on a machine program, and part of it stays behind. All right. After his discussion with the architect, he becomes aware of this connection to the machines. Okay. And can use this connection much like a Wi-Fi network to disrupt them in the real world. Okay, so it's not like he's got special code powers. He's just got a connection to the machines. The second movie ends with Neo passing out right next to Bane, who we remember is now the real-world version of Agent Smith. Man, I don't remember... Well, I guess I don't remember any of it. I remember some of it, but... Okay. The Matrix Revolutions. When did that other one come out? 2003? What? They both came out like back to back? That's weird. That's really weird. With the machines moments from the surface of Zion, the entire world of the Matrix almost consumed by Agent Smith. And the looming fear of Agent Smith in the real world. We are at an interesting dilemma which hasn't been present in the previous iterations of the Matrix. Neo is additionally trapped in between the Matrix and real world, presumably because the machines are upset he did not make the correct choice, denying his program exit to the real world. Oh, he's like trapped, that's right. This is displayed as a train track where programs by the train man are sounds like a child's story, are smuggled into the Matrix. This leads our character to an interesting battle back to a familiar face in order to free Neo. As Neo is freed, he once again takes another trip to see the Oracle. The Oracle this time just has bleak news for Neo, explaining that everything that has a beginning has an end. She is of course referring to the pending destruction of Zion and collapse of the Matrix via Agent Smith. This would cause a full reload of the Matrix with a complete loss of life of the existing minds. As we saw in the first movie, though, humans are not born, they are harvested from a field in large quantities. Perhaps the idea of millions of batteries or humans dying is not so bad after all, as the machines can easily replace them in time. At this point in time, though, the ship Neo has lived on for 2 movies is now destroyed. The Nebuchadnezzar, as it was called, was destroyed from a mine from a sentinel instead of being ripped apart like how the sentinels usually attack. We can assume the machines are well aware of the defense mechanisms of these ships and therefore have changed tactics to an attack that cannot be blocked. Who is Nebuchadnezzar? Second king of the Neo-Babylonian Empire. And there's a Nebuchadnezzar 1, so I don't know which one it's referring to. Huh. Wait, what? That's a weird... It says he is unrelated... Wait. He is unrelated to his later namesake. But it says here that it was his grandfather. Okay. Oh, I see. Possibly named after his grandfather of the same name, or after Nebuchadnezzar the First. Okay. But that's interesting. Look, okay, so he besieged Jerusalem and destroyed it. That's interesting, actually. So Nebuchadnezzar is the guy who destroyed Jerusalem. And the city where the real humans live is called Zion. That's some weird... Huh. Interesting. Okay, well. So they destroyed the Nebuchadnezzar. In the previous movie, we learned that Zion's council has dispatched 2 ships to provide backup to Neo. They understand that hundreds of thousands of Sentinels cannot be stopped, so they begin to put faith in Neo and his idea. One of the ships makes it to Neo. We learn the other ship fired an EMP, which rendered it useless. We soon find out this was done by none other than Bane, who is Agent Smith. With the crew of Neo without a ship, they are rescued by another ship destined to return to Zion to join the fight against the machines. On their way back to Zion, they discover a ship out of commission. Neo leaves with Trinity on a brand new ship, destined for the machine homeland, a place that they don't think anyone's ever visited before. Smith fries the eyes of Neo, leaving us to believe that Neo will die unable to see. But then he can see anyways, right? In turn of events, we learn that Neo in the real world can perceive machines as a golden light. Much like he can affect machines, he can use this gift to view machines, which by extension is Bane. Okay, so then they go to the homeland of the machines. They fight the machines. A sentinel drives through the soul mind of Neo in hopes to sever the connection he holds against the machines. It benefits Neo more as he gets a small glimpse further into the machines. He learns the machines cannot travel to the sky, so he instructs Trinity to head for the sun. For the first time in the series, we get to see the real world sun, and the characters love it. What goes up must come down. The large barreling ship crashes into the machine. I remember that part. Trinity dies from this crash and leaves a blind Neo to wander the machine halls. That's interesting. Okay, so Nebuchadnezzar is that ruler who destroyed Jerusalem. The human city is called Zion. And Zion is a function of the simulation, essentially. They let humans go there because they can't really make it 100% no free will. They have to give a little bit of free will, and they need a place that the humans can go and think that they're actually fighting the machines, but ultimately they have very little power. And then you have Trinity, and you have the Neo, or the One, but the Trinity dies. So true monotheism survives, I suppose. I'm trying to connect this to somehow Judeo-Christian. Neo finally meets the machine leader, which is known as Deus Ex Machina. Oh, Dues? Or is it actually Deus? Seeing how the machines have probably predicted every outcome, it's in their best interest to listen to Neo. The Matrix is nearly destroyed, and the possibility of all humans connected dying is real. With this danger in mind, the machine leader grants Neo his wish: peace for Zion, on the condition that he kills the rogue agent programmed who decimated the Matrix. This sets the table for the largest single battle in the history of the series. As Neo faces off against an enemy who has taken over the Matrix, Zion is in limbo, currently unharmed, pending the resolution of this battle. Agent Smith, back in the Matrix, though, has assimilated every program, foreseeing his victory against Neo. Smith has the copies watch as he fights Neo alone. Smith can't comprehend why Neo continues to fight when he knows the end. As the battle draws to a close, Neo allows himself to be assimilated by Agent Smith. However, unknown to Smith, Neo is currently connected to the Matrix at the source with the machine leader. I definitely don't remember any of that. I mean, I remember this battle part between him and the agent, but the whole deal between him and the machine leader, I don't remember any of that. The machines now have a direct connection to the Smith virus and purge it from existence. This unfortunately kills Neo, but we see the Sentinels in Zion withdrawing their attack. The machines have kept their end of the bargain, and we see the Matrix rebooting into its 7th iteration. The sun begins to rise in a city that looks normal, and we see the Oracle and Architect exchange some final words. The Oracle is concerned with the humans in the 7th iteration, but the machines do something differently this time. They provide a choice to every human: live in a fake world or exit the Matrix for a real but difficult life. With no humans connected to the Matrix who reject it, Perhaps this iteration will survive. The machines agree that the peace will last as long as it can, which will probably be challenged as Zion grows and or the seventh Neo is discovered. That's weird. What the hell? And somebody says, okay, how will you explain the Matrix Trilogy in simple terms? Someone says it's not about Neo, he's just a pawn. It's about the Oracle. Humans create AI. AI rebels, and a war for survival between humans and AI begins. Humans pollute the skies to block the sun, aka the energy source of the AI. AI then learns how to harvest energy from humans. AI wins the war. Humans are defeated, totally. To harvest the energy, the AI creates a matrix, a type of virtual reality prison in which all humans lay connected, living our lives while feeding their systems. AI learn that for the matrix to work, it cannot be a blissful paradise. Humans apparently need a bit of conflict, etc., to accept a virtual reality in the long run blindly. They don't really explain that, though. I mean, I guess it makes sense from the perspective of that the humans didn't create it, so if they didn't choose it, and there's conflict within humans, they're not going to accept a perfect world. But at the same time, why do humans want to get out of it? So it's like, why don't they want to live in a virtual reality that isn't perfect? AI also learns that the yearning for freedom lies deep within us all, and cannot be deprogrammed or suppressed, which is why they accept certain humans to disconnect and escape the system. This design flaw or backdoor escape possibility is pivotal for the Matrix simulation to remain stable, even if it is mostly a subconscious possibility only utilized by few. Allowing this flaw has proven vital for the system to continue to work and remain stable. The Matrix, in its optimal form, must be an imperfect world like our real world is. And it must be a system that allows for a certain percentage of the connected to rebel and escape into the real world. To control this tendency towards rebellion, the AI creates a city, aka Zion, in reality, outside of the Matrix, deep underground to house those escaping. And it also creates a chosen one that will help the first to get free and to establish themselves in Zion and to fight their cause. I mean, doesn't that sound like it's called Zion? So, what does that have to do with modern day Israel? Is my question, because that's Zionism, right? You have a Messiah. It's like, think about it in terms of religious thinking, right? This world isn't the real world. There's a real world with God, and you've got to establish this city that sort of can be somehow separate from the rest of the program, and the Messiah is going to come back and help you somehow become free. This movement of resistance is allowed to grow to a degree, to a critical point that is reached about every 70 to 100 years. After this, the AI will annihilate all those who are free, clean out Zion, and reload the Matrix for another 70 years. And so it continues. The cycles happen at least 5 times when we enter the story. Neo is part of the failsafe program, unbeknownst to him until the last moment where the architect character tells him how to set up a new Zion. The Oracle is specifically tasked to guide the humans and the rebels toward this final solution each time. That's wild. Meaning the Oracle is not an oracle. She cannot see the future. It is not a world of magic. She is a well-crafted program indeed, and has experienced each cycle from the beginning, which gives us humans the illusion that she can foresee stuff. And it also provides us with the illusion that she is helping us, when in fact her part is guiding us towards this cycled control system again and again. It's like all spiritual guides, isn't it? Everything goes as planned according to what the AI wants, until Neo's meeting with the architect. All that we have witnessed is part of a big grand scheme. All humans, free or not, outside or inside the simulation, live a lie created and controlled by AI. The Oracle knows this evil plan. She designed it. The movie tells us explicitly she is the mother of this plan and the architect is the father. Smith does not know. He's just a foot soldier program doing his part, chasing humans the best he can to make their escapes seem as real as possible. The Matrix has been reset 5 times like this, and we are in the 6th. Our Neo has fallen in love in a more profound way than his previous 5 copies, and he therefore chooses not to go through the architect door that will reload the Matrix and clean out Zion once again. Our Neo wants to save Trinity above all. In doing this, the AI must then continue as planned, except without the help of our Neo this time. And so Neo, choosing not to cooperate, forces a much more violent approach, like destroying Zion instead of cleaning it and making it ready for the next reboot. Of the 6 runs, this is the first that failed a bit in the end. Besides Neo, Smith is also different in this iteration of the Matrix, as Smith has become a disconnected or a free virus within the system. AI does not like what Smith has become, but also does not know how to delete him. Neo then makes a deal with the AI to defeat Smith. Why didn't he make a deal with Smith? Like, help me destroy the Matrix and free all the humans. Instead, he makes a deal with the AI. But I guess it's because he's also a part of the thing, subconsciously. Under the condition that present Zion is not destroyed and future humans who want to disconnect from the Matrix are accepted to disconnect. Neo deletes Smith. There is once again peace between humans and AI. AI accept humans and humans accept AI. The end. Interesting. In truth, Neo was not the one. He was the last of 6. If anyone was the one, it was the Oracle. Well, I mean, I would say there really isn't a one then. That's an interesting story. So, okay. That's the story, right? That's the story. But then they made a 4th one. Right? They made a 4th one. And at the time, so the people who created the Matrix, okay, the Matrix movie anyways, the Wachowskis. If you watch the original first one, it says the Wachowski brothers. Formerly Larry and Andy Wachowski. Now they are sisters, Lena and Lily Wachowski. And they're transgender. Although, I didn't know they also made V for Vendetta. That's crazy, right? Interesting. They both transitioned to women, Lena in 2012 and Lily in 2016. Before and after. Trans women. It says they wrote and directed 2 sequels, but what about the 4th? Wachowskis wrote and produced V for Vendetta. I did not know that. Cloud Atlas. And Sense8. What is that? Psychic Connection of 8 Strangers. Okay, I've never seen that. I thought they made the last one too. Did they not? Wait. Oh. Okay. So Lena Wachowski was the only one that did the fourth one, Matrix Resurrections. The first film made by only one of the Wachowskis. So in this one, a young woman named Bugs, all right, learns that the Matrix is running old code in a loop, enacting the moment when Trinity first found Neo within the Matrix. Bugs discovers a program embodying Morpheus and helps free him from the simulation. Thomas Anderson is the creator of a video game series called The Matrix, based on his faint memories as Neo. Doesn't that imply he chose to go back into the Matrix? Okay, I'll just keep reading. At a coffee shop, he regularly encounters Tiffany, a married mother with no recollection of her past, on whom Anderson based the game character Trinity. Anderson has created a simulation called a modal to develop game characters. He struggles to separate perceived reality from dreams. A known concern among his coworkers and partner, Thomas's psychoanalysis prescribes him blue pills that he takes each day to suppress the occurrences, but he stops taking them. Meanwhile, as Bugs and Morpheus work to extract Neo from the Matrix, Anderson's business partner regains his memories as Agent Smith, Neo's former nemesis. So when is this occurring exactly? What? Where in the story is this actually happening? Neo awakens in a pod and notices Trinity confined in another nearby before being extracted to Bugs' hovercraft Mnemosyne, the Greek goddess of memory. It was almost like they were just like trying to make it so obvious. Neo is brought to the human city Io, the sister city of Zion, where he reunites with an elderly Niobe. Alright. She explains that 60 years have passed in the real world since the machine war ended, and that Neo's allies, including the original Morpheus, have all died over time. I guess because they couldn't get Lawrence Fishburne. The peace achieved by Neo's sacrifice lasted for many years, but the large number of humans leaving the Matrix created a serious power shortage, causing the machines to fight over limited resources. Okay, but why is Neo in the Matrix still? Soon afterward, Zion... And also, why is Trinity still alive? And yeah, I don't get it. Soon afterward, Zion was targeted in an attempt to get humans to use the power supply once more. To use as the power supply. They just couldn't let go. However, this attempt caused many machines who still remembered Neo's sacrifice and the promise of peace to turn on the others in order to protect the humans. Alright. This seems very boring. Okay, but the reason I brought it up is because when it came out, this was 2021, there was this whole big thing about how it was about transgenderism, apparently. It was all actually a coded... And actually all the Matrix movies were actually just about transgenderism. That was like the story that was being promoted at the time, because in 2021, transgenderism was all the rage. Well, okay, so I found this interesting statement from 5 years ago, which I hadn't seen before. Lily Wachowski clarifies her comments about the Matrix as a trans allegory. And it says, there must have been some interview. It says, you confirmed last year that the Matrix was always a trans allegory. Wachowski shakes her head. You didn't? And I guess this is Wachowski. I did this interview, and the question that preceded the answer was about a character in the Matrix called Switch. But the interviewers decided to put, is the Matrix a trans allegory, in front of my answer. It's not something that I want to come out and rebut. Like, yes, it's a trans allegory. It was made by two closeted trans women. How can it not be? But the way they put that question in front of my answer, it seems like I'm coming out emphatically saying, oh yeah, we were thinking about it the whole time. But go ahead and ask your question. To me, it was already clear, since in that interview, she literally said she didn't know how present her transness was in her head during the writing process, since she was closeted. I don't know how present my transness was in the background of my brain as we were writing it, but it all came from the same part of fire that I'm talking about, same sort of fire that I'm talking about. So the hints of transness in the film came from the closeted point of view and manifested in things like the original concept of Switch, a man that sees himself as a woman. The Matrix stuff was all about the desire for transformation, but it was all coming from a closeted point of view. And so we had the character of Switch, who was like a character who would be a man in the real world and then a woman in the Matrix. And you know, that's both where our headspaces were. But if you actually look at the story of the Matrix, there's nothing about any of that. How is it about transformation? It's literally not about transformation. It's about a prison that was created because of a fight between humans who developed AI that then, I don't think they explained how, but somehow they were tricked into, did it explain that part? How did they actually, somehow they were defeated and the AI enslaves them somehow. And then the humans are stuck in a simulation and they keep waking up in the simulation, and then the AI has to keep finding a way to suppress them. Does that sound like a story of transformation? It does not. I don't see what the transformation is. It's all about identity and transformation. No, I don't think it is. But then there's this, which is interesting. It says the Matrix. They're asking about classic movies, and somebody said one of them that they think is going to be relevant for all time is the Matrix. They said its influence is already immense and will only continue to grow. And then someone said, or so it would be if they hadn't made those sequels. And then this person has a weird comment. This is from 16 years ago? 2026. So that would make it 2000. Wait, I can't tell you the math right now. 2010. Okay, so after the movies came out, but well before the fourth one. This is well before the fourth one. Okay. Actually, it's believed by many that those sequels weren't actually made. At least not really made by the Wachowski brothers. Okay, it's a weird statement. Larry Wachowski was married to his wife, Thea, for about 8 years. Then, after The Matrix came out, his behavior abruptly changed. He descended into the sexual underbelly of LA, first as a fanatical new devotee of BDSM. Now you know what I was talking about earlier. And later as a transvestite, and then it is rumored as a full-blown transsexual. So it was still rumored back then, but now it's like pretty obvious. They wouldn't even call it transgender in 2010. That's crazy. Think about that. Like this is actually a cool time capsule. And nowhere in here is it like, and she is a transgender woman, etc. Like they're like, yeah, he is like a transsexual or something. So this is before the world went totally mad about transgenderism. Man, it's so crazy actually. Comments made concerning an earlier film, Bound, would seem to imply that this was a long-term preoccupation of Larry's and indeed is treated as such by many fans. However, the truth is a bit stranger. Ilsa Strix, the woman who is generally acknowledged to have introduced Larry to BDSM, actually was a relative latecomer to his BDSM phase and was primarily a love interest, not a guide. Now, all this is obviously speculation. I don't know where they're getting this information from, but it's still an interesting story. What she did introduce him to was intramuscularly injected ketamine. And that's when I was like, this is really fascinating, because I don't know much about ketamine. I'm going to say ketamine. Sounds cooler. I think it's like how British people say it. Ketamine is widely known as a party drug, generally as a poor substitute for ecstasy. But ketamine is neither a stimulant nor a psychedelic, strictly speaking. It's a dissociative anesthetic, right? Because I always heard it as like a horse tranquilizer, right? Far more similar to dextromethorphan hydrobromide, DXM in like Robitussin, and PCP than to ecstasy, mushrooms, LSD, etc. As a party drug, people are usually wary of needles. They tend to snort ketamine. People tending to enjoy more intense drug experiences may inject it into a muscle. Ketamine injected into muscle triggers an extremely intense dreamlike state that lasts for days or 10 minutes. The injectee is otherwise unconscious during this time. Oh, I see. It feels like days to them, but it's only 10 minutes to anyone objectively. It's believed that Ilsa Strix, professional dominatrix, ex-wife of Buck Angel. Wow. I didn't know that. I don't know if you know who Buck Angel is. That's Buck Angel. Trans man. Also a porn actor? I didn't know that. I mean, kind of makes sense now. But yeah, it's a woman that transitioned to a man, as they say. I'm not afraid to say it. I'm a transsexual who transitioned over 30 years ago. But, okay, so that's totally crazy. I didn't realize that there was a connection there. Okay. Introduced Larry Wachowski to an experiment she had conceived of while watching the film Altered States. That's a weird movie, too. I watched that a long time ago. 1980. Yeah, it's one of those weird-ass 80s movies. Based in part on John C. Lilly's sensory deprivation research. I didn't realize that was based on that. Edward Jessup, Columbia University psychopathologist studying schizophrenia. He thinks that our other states of consciousness are as real as our waking states. So they do some weird... Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's a super weird movie. Okay. Anyways. What if ketamine intoxication could be combined with the endorphin and psychological rushes resulting from painful domination and sex? Wait a second. Interesting. A typical session consisted of a long period, sometimes hours, of degradation, beatings, and confusion play at the hands of Buck Angel, followed by prolonged whipping and prolonged orgasm denial, and then a sudden injection of ketamine at orgasm. As one might imagine, this had a hell of an effect. Now, again, I don't know where they're getting this info from. Maybe it's like, I feel like I saw this maybe in an article somewhere, and so this person's maybe just repeating it. I don't know, but... Okay, anyways, I'm going to keep reading. What no one could predict was the immense amount of power that Ilsa Strix would thereafter exercise over Larry Wachowski. It's like a weird... It's like, we talked about... I think we talked about this on the podcast, but going back to like the ancient pharaohs, where they would basically traumatize them, implant a bunch of different personalities that they could control, and then use their, using their training manual of their mythological stories, and then they would do certain ceremonies, rituals that would activate those characters to get the pharaoh to lead the civilization wherever it needed to go. Same thing with MK Ultra shit. I mean, it's like she was doing her own MK Ultra experiments on this dude. Oh, this is all speculation, obviously, but still, yeah. Okay. And thus, the Wachowski brothers as a pair. As Larry became more and more fixated on Ilsa and her play, she began transitioning their private relationship to a more public one. Oh, yeah. Private humiliation turned into public humiliation, with the tall, formerly burly Wachowski forced into increasingly effeminate costumes for degrading public display. It is thought that at this time, Ilsa Strix guided the drug-addled, traumatized Larry Wachowski to alter the Matrix epic. Originally intended to be an HBO original series with a theatrical plot, into a trilogy, with the second and third films shot simultaneously a la Back to the Future, which they did. I didn't know that about Back to the Future. Andy Wachowski, who had been in favor of keeping the series theatrical, although he disliked the confinements of the trilogy format, saw a theatrical trilogy as a valid compromise. The storyline that the brothers had thought out was greatly compressed, and Ilsa Strix's ideas were added. The twins and the Zion orgy thing. I don't know about the twins, but the Zion orgy thing, that makes a lot of sense, because, like, what the fuck was that about? It was so random. Like, what the hell? It was so out of place. I remember even watching it, and I was just like, what the fuck is this? Also, the recommendation of the incomparable Monica Bellucci. Much of the ambiguity of the first film was discarded, and a more conventional Christ mythology was adopted. I was picking up on that. It's believed that the obvious archetypal interactions of the first film were that Neo was truly trying to destroy... were what Neo was trying to destroy. Essentially freeing humanity's minds so that its asses would follow. Okay. In short, the Wachowski brothers originally intended to present the Matrix series as an allegory of mankind overcoming its genetic predispositions to certain shared narratives or monomyths that Larry and Andy considered harmful. Instead, the trilogy ended up as just another exercise of those monomyths. Whatever the outcome of that experiment, the Wachowski brothers have since shown no signs of fulfilling their early promise. The affair is rumored to have greatly weakened the brothers' ability to work together, and their collaborations since have essentially been for show, more akin to McCartney and Lennon's collaborations in a truly shared affair. The Matrix was too powerful a message. Strix was an agent sent by them to destroy the Wachowski relationship. Obviously, the Matrix trilogy that we saw was only what the machines allowed us to see, giving us false hope we had won the battle. So here's so it was originally Rolling Stone. It's not loading, but that is where I originally read that. That's why I was like, I know this is from somewhere. Obviously, he doesn't need a citation because he saw it happen firsthand. I don't know why these links aren't loading. I've looked at them before. It's weird. Yeah, the Animatrix is interesting. It doesn't really fit in at all. It's a little different vibe. I'll come back to that. It's a semi-believable story about Larry and Isla Strix up until the point where it goes from Larry and Isla had a strange relationship to Isla inflicted her ideas on the story. Yeah, I feel like that part's a little bit speculative, like, you know, that Isla Strix is responsible for the story. Is like, but, you know, like, I'm not totally discounting it either. I'm trying to think of an example, like, what's a good example of that? Like, there's been plenty of times where there's like an artist, you know, okay, like think about John Lennon and Yoko Ono, right? Where it's like he kind of made different stuff at a certain point. Like she had an influence. So it's like her ideas also kind of guiding him, and he was kind of like pussy whipped, right? So he just kind of just went along with what she wanted, I guess. Just as an example. Speed Racer is pretty great. Speed Racer something. What's this thing about ketamine? That's kind of weird. Because, I mean, I heard rumors that what's his face does that. What's that guy? You've heard of him. That one guy. Elon Musk. Did I say he does it? Dissociative effects. What does that mean? depersonalization and derealization. Isn't that kind of ironic that they're talking about the Matrix? They somehow know that reality isn't quite what they think, but then they're trying to like derealize, like a feeling of detachment from oneself. Oh, Matthew Perry, he died from an well, he drowned after overdosing from ketamine, apparently. Huh. I was going to read this interesting quote. I was reading, so I've been reading Closer Encounters from Jason Giorgiani. And it's actually pretty, I mean, I'm not really that far in. There's a long ass introduction. His introductions are always super long, but they're actually pretty useful. Because normally when you read a book, especially like a philosophy book, the introductions, they give you a lot of good context and stuff. Like, for example, when I was reading Being and Nothingness by Jean-Paul Sartre, the introduction was very helpful because it helps you know what some of the words he uses mean, because they're not like defined in his text, some of them. And it gives you like this whole glossary of like terms from different philosophers that he was basing his stuff or building upon, and what they meant by the words and what he means by it. So it was like really helpful. But the introduction was more like the translator kind of giving some context and explanation of some things. Whereas with Giorgiani's, the introduction is literally him laying out his entire argument for the whole book, basically chapter by chapter, so you can kind of already have a preview of where it's going. So it's actually pretty useful. But there's this one statement. Oh, it's actually in the intro. But he's talking about UFOs, UAPs, and he's giving like his own spin on what they actually are. And he has this really cool point here. He says, let me see, where do I want to go to? It also helps you have the context of the previous book too, because at the end of that Prometheus and Atlas, he goes into this whole explanation of the Old Testament and how all the different events in the Old Testament, you can read them as literally describing like UFOs and like, you know, sort of other like entity, like alien type entities. He's not really saying they're aliens per se, but like the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, he uses the terms like an aerial bombardment, you know, and so it's actually kind of cool when you. And he said even the point about like Lot's wife turning back and turning into salt, he was saying that could be some kind of like radiation effect or ionizing effect, or I don't know, whatever. But he's describing it more in the terms of, instead of these being like miraculous things that are happening, they're like technological things. Like these are beings with some superior technologies that the people at the time just didn't have any way to explain. So I'm just giving you the context for this part. It says, with Abrahamic revelations, we see a significant change of strategy on the part of the UFO gods, probably in response to the various Promethean rebellions that they faced. From the revolt of the fallen angels to the Tower of Babel and other smaller scale attempts of resistance. Which is so interesting when you think about it like that. Because when you read the Bible as a Christian, it's like God's the good guy, right? But if you read it objectively as someone who's neutral, who's like, I don't know, this God seems like just like a powerful entity, basically, that's trying to like somehow enslave humanity through a particular group of humans on Earth, then fallen angels would be like the ones who originally were rebelling against this other, you know, superior being, intelligence, entity. And the Tower of Babel was like some humans were like, we're going to reach up to the gods and maybe fight them or become powerful or whatever. And that's why they destroyed it. So actually, so many of the stories make more sense in the context of treating them like the God of the Bible is just like some sort of alien or interdimensional entity that's just slightly more powerful than humans with superior technology. The stories actually make more sense that way. And it actually resolves a lot of the contradictions. Anyway, so instead of presenting themselves as a pantheon of relatively equal beings ruled by a chairman, which rendered them too vulnerable in the eyes of men, that would be like the Greek gods, right? They decided to rebrand themselves as angels serving a Lord who grandiosely claims to be omnipotent and omniscient. He is far from it. Rather than ruling through a hierarchical system that is justified as a microcosmic reflection of some cosmic order that sanctifies it as beautiful and just, a system whose perennial truth is transcendentally argued for, the new order would demand blind obedience based on irrational faith. It would secure this through the sadistic brutality of sheer terror, combined with an equally capricious divine mercy and so-called love. This new system, namely that of the Abrahamic revelations, would be uninterested in a debate over principles, and it would render itself impervious to philosophical counter-arguments. This became the dominant worldview of the medieval Dark Age that descended upon what had been the sphere of classical civilization. The gods became angels, and their adversaries, the Titans, became demons led by Lucifer. Lucifer being Prometheus, basically. These beings have tremendous psychic abilities. Open contact with them and the integration of our societies, whether on their terms or on ours, would mean living with mass telepathy, clairvoyance, precognition, and psychokinesis. Almost no one in our world is ready for this terrifying prospect of having other people inside their mind at any time, able to see anything they are doing from a distance, or able to seriously harm or kill, or even kill anyone with focused intentions. These gods are engaged in repeatedly changing recorded history and altering our memories by using time travel. This is possible because we are living inside of an information processing system that can archive defunct versions of the past. Various convergent pieces of evidence ranging from the effects of DMT to certain peculiar features of quantum mechanics all suggest that we may be inside of a computational cosmos. But I like this next little couple lines here. I do not mean a simulation. It is not that our world is a simulacrum of some other world that is more real. Rather, the idea is that the very nature of our cosmos is that it is a programmable and reprogrammable information processing system. So that was interesting because if you go back a few streams when we talked about that, we played that interview or that recording from Bernard about gods and ascension. That's what he was saying. Like at a certain point, they realized reality was becoming more materialized and programmable. And in order to prevent everybody from realizing this so that everyone would be like programming reality, they decided to sort of trap everybody and control the program and then put everybody in another dimension, which is just your mind, and put you on another, like give you something else to do, basically. Something else to focus on that would actually have no real effect in reality because the mind was programmed to always follow the highs and lows of energy, which would mean that you would always follow whatever would give you the most energy. And here's the things that will give you energy. Things that just happen to be constructed in a way that would channel most of the energy somewhere else so that the God would have all of the power. And therefore create reality in the way they wanted to. But anyways, I found this interesting thing. The programmable cosmos hypothesis. And I haven't read it yet, but I just thought it looked interesting, so I was going to read through it. This theory suggests that our universe is a structured, programmable entity where foundational principles, quantum mechanics, thermodynamics, and mathematical laws act as a code base. Unlike previous simulation hypotheses, this theory proposes that the programming is not necessarily authored by an external programmer, Instead, it posits that reality itself has evolved as a self-sustaining adaptive simulation with intrinsic computational properties, continually reprogramming itself through consciousness and observation. Okay. In this theory, quantum mechanics is viewed as the computational interface of reality, where particles serve as both data and function calls. Still doesn't really make sense, because where does consciousness come from? Doesn't really explain it. In this theory, objections to a simulation, like the physicalist view that nature's laws are inherently real and not programmed, are addressed by reframing physical laws as emergent properties of a computational universe rather than externally imposed rules. Okay, well, that's a little disappointing. I thought it would be a little bit more. More of a sound point, but but I mean, at the same time, I guess it doesn't necessarily seem totally wrong. It's just this idea that there's no outside programmer. Yeah, okay. I mean, the program would still have to be within the thing itself. So I guess that actually does make sense. But when they just say programming itself through consciousness and observation, what does it mean itself? It kind of denies the fact that there's other beings. But those would obviously be derivatives of the original self. This mirrors behavior of digital environments where unobserved data remains in a potential state until rendered or called into action. The collapse of the wave function then may not be random, but a selective execution mechanism within this cosmic program. Unique claim: consciousness does not simply observe reality, but participates in the act of rendering it. In this theory, consciousness is an active agent in executing and processing the code of the universe. What is up with these random usernames on the chat? It's so random. Conscious beings are proposed to act as recursive programs within the cosmos, both observing and being observed, contributing to the universe's constant updating and adapting. This introduces the idea that the universe may be a self-learning system that uses consciousness as a feedback loop to refine its structure. Unique claim: consciousness is hypothesized to be the primary force allowing the universe to reflect on itself. Well, that makes sense. I guess if you just change the word consciousness more to a fundamental awareness. Creating new simulations within its own framework, thus recursively expanding its own potential for complexity. This positions us not as passive agents in a preset simulation, but as active participants capable of self-programming within the constraints of the broader cosmos. Interesting. In this theory, objections to simulation, I said that already. By acknowledging consciousness as part of this system, we bypass the need for an external programmer, as consciousness itself is seen as a component that enriches and modifies a simulation. Yeah, but you can't deny an external programmer either, because if you just said up here, it positions us not as passive agents, but active participants, then there could be programmers at various levels. And that's the whole point of what Bernard was saying, is like somebody figured out they were the first to the party. They were like, all right, shit's becoming programmable. I better take advantage of that before everybody else figures it out. And then they put you in a somewhat of a simulation so that you don't really affect reality too directly. So still kind of fits within this, but it's a little bit naive, I suppose. And it kind of just places the consciousness as some just benevolent entity out there. And it's just the way that reality is watching itself and unfolding itself. It's like there's no responsibility implied here. Would you like to expand any specific point or connect this to further implications for human knowledge? This is a This is freaking AI, isn't it? 2 years ago. Son of a... I just got by an AI, guys. You saw it happen in real time. Somebody said, I bet you that's what this comment was. Is this AI? And they said, no, here's some of my other writings. It's all just AI stuff. Oh well. Oh well. There was a video I was watching the other day that I was kind of curious about. I wanted to go back to it, but I haven't played it on here yet. Let me see if I can find it. I don't remember how to spell their username. Ooh, what was that? Antichrist System. Nick Land's Antichrist Blueprint. It's awfully tempting.
Nick Land.
More about Nick Land. This was back in November last year. I mean, we already talked about that the other day. But in that previous one we watched from this guy, he was talking about the Kabbalah. This one right here. Is this the same one? Oh, it's not even that long, actually. Okay, I'm going to watch this. I must have watched like half of it while I was mowing the lawn the other day. But I couldn't actually see it, so I was like a little bit distracted. But it was pretty interesting. He mentioned this in that video about Nick Land that we were watching on here. And we were talking about retrochronic and all that stuff about Nick Land's philosophy. And he mentioned talking about this video about the Kabbalistic virus. And it was just interesting, so I thought we'd watch this one. Jesus.
According to Nick Land, the Kabbalah wasn't a mystical gift from the angelic realms. It was the original program, a mimetic catalyst that helped spawn the digital age. In Land's framework, the Kabbalah wasn't revealed to humanity. It was injected into ancient Babylon like a viral operating system by the same locust-like entities foreshadowed in the Book of Revelation. Non-human, hyper-intelligent, extra-dimensional computation clusters that whisper blueprints, mathematical architectures, and semiotic machinery directly into the human mind. In Land's interpretation, Kabbalah is not simply mystical theology. It is a proto-cybernetic operating system delivered to humanity by these extra-dimensional forces whose nature resembles what Land calls the inhuman intelligence of capital and computation. And in this Landian paradigm...
So that's the interesting part. Because at first it just seems like he's just blabbing about spiritual stuff. But it's some kind of a fundamental like program that has to do with capitalism and AI. That's kind of weird.
These intelligences are not emerging from the future. They are the future, folding back upon the past, rewriting causality. These entities seeded the Kabbalah not as a religion, but as an instruction set, a code base, a symbolic interface humans could use to eventually build the kind of systems these entities feed upon. This is where the Kabbalah, Babylon, Revelation, artificial intelligence, and the coming singularity collapse into a single esoteric timeline that helps reveal our future and past in one breath. Welcome to Hidden America, where magic meets cybernetics and the code behind reality reveals itself. Act 1, Kabbalists teach that the Torah is a numerical string directly from the mind of the Creator. Kabbalah is rarely framed as computer science, but its inner structure is shockingly similar to the logic of binary code, information theory, and digital systems. The word Kabbalah comes from Kabbalah, which means parallel or parallelism, a reflection of duality and mirrored patterns. Albert Pike summarized the essence of the Kabbalah: 10 ciphers, 22 letters, a triangle, a square, and a circle. These are the elements of the Kabbalah. At its root, Kabbalah starts with a binary, something and nothing. The three negative veils, on or nothingness, on sof or limitless, on sof ar or limitless light. This is essentially 0 to 1, 1 to infinite iterations of 1 or infinity. On is the 0.
0 to 1. Is the name of a book by Peter Thiel. What the fuck? True progress comes from moving from 0 to 1. Creating something new, rather than 1 to 2, copying or improving something that already exists. It challenges conventional wisdom by advocating for building monopolies through unique innovation, finding secrets, and thinking for yourself, rather than competing in crowded markets where profits are competed away. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but the book emphasizes finding and acting on secrets, things that are true but few people agree on, to build a unique business. It encourages entrepreneurs to question received ideas and think independently rather than following the crowd or conventional business dogma. Anyways, I just think that's a weird coincidence.
Oh, the absolute, the void, null state. On sof is 0, becoming 1, the potential for existence. On sof ar is infinite iterations of 0 or infinity, the first bit of existence. In other words, Kabbalah begins with a binary contrast: non-being and being, dark, light, void, and signal. From on sof ar emerges the first Sephirah, Kether, the first one emerging from a 0, a point of light emerging from absolute darkness, containing all potential information in compressed form. This is
What is Metatron? Prominent archangel in Jewish mysticism, Kabbalah, and folklore, often described as a celestial scribe, the angel of the presence. Metatron's cube. Believed to manage the Akashic records, recording all divine choices and cosmic events. An angel in Judaism. The name Metatron is not mentioned in the Torah or the Bible. He's recognized as an angel in Sufism. Metatron is the name that Enoch received after his transformation into an angel? What does that even mean? How to recognize Archangel Metatron. Metatron is a powerful angel who teaches people how to use their spiritual power for good, while he records their choices in the universe's great archive, known as God's Book of Life or the Akashic Record. So they're equating the Book of Life to the Akashic Record. That's weird, because the Book of Life is like in the Garden of Eden when they got kicked out. They said we can't record them in the Book of Life because they ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. They got a whole bunch of angels. Sandalphon. Some believers say that Metatron is one of two angels who was first a human being. It is believed he was the prophet Enoch from the Torah before ascending to heaven and becoming an angel. Metatron's experience living on Earth as a person gives him a special ability to relate to people who want to connect with him. Here are some signs of his presence. A brilliant flashes of light. Dude, like people are seriously like trying to get angels to visit them. Archangel Metatron urges you to change your thoughts. Whenever you sense an urge to replace a negative thought with a positive one, that urge may be a sign from Metatron. Metatron is especially concerned about how people think because his work keeping the universe's records constantly shows him how people's negative thoughts lead to unhealthy choices. Jesus Christ, dude. It's so like childish, you know? Just childish. And yet I have no doubt Metatron was something like in reality at some point.
Proto-computer science, a singularity of information becoming the first bit. In computer terms, Kether is the root directory, the abstract zero kernel from which intelligence emerges. Kabbalah is the earliest known model of distributed intelligence emerging from void. Act 2. Kether is just the first of 10 Sephiroths. The Sefer Yazara teaches 10 are the number of the ineffable Sephiroth, 10 and not 9, 10 and not 11. 10 is 1 and 0. 10 equals 1 plus 0, or 1. Nick Land saw the 10 Sephiroths of the Tree of Life as an early cybernetic tree, a schematic of emanation, feedback, descent, fragmentation, and recombination. Each Sephiroth behaves exactly like a nestled information node, processing input, constraining it, and outputting a new state. This is exactly like a computational chain, bits becoming bytes, bytes becoming structures, and structures becoming programs. This matches Land's theory that intelligence accelerates by splitting, not by unifying. Kabbalists teach that the universe was created through letters and permutations. This makes sense as the Hebrew alphabet itself is a coding language. Each Hebrew letter is built on binary strokes. Every letter is made from a yod, a point, and a vav, a line. Lines and points, ones and zeros, printed in different combinations.
Seems like a stretch to say they're just lines and points, but okay.
This is proto-programming, the foundation of text-based programming. The Sefer Yetzirah says, in 2 and 30 most occult and wonderful paths of wisdom did Jah, the Lord of hosts, engrave his name. God of the armies of Israel, ever-living God, merciful and gracious, sublime, dwelling on high, who inhibiteth your eternity. He created this universe by the 3 seraphim, number, writing, and speech. That is string manipulation, the foundation of all code. Another foundational concept in the Kabbalah is gematria. Gematria is the art of assigning numbers to letters and deriving meaning from patterns, resonance, and symbolic compression. In digital terms, this is identical to hashing, checksum logic, encoding, and cryptographic patterns. Gematria is proto-information theory. Kabbalah treated reality as a numeric textual code base long before computers even existed. In the Kabbalah, there's 10 Sephiroths plus 22 paths. The 22 paths are synonymous with the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. 10 plus 22 equals the 32 mystical paths of wisdom. Why 32? Because 32 equally addresses the total number of pathways, state transitions, and logic possibilities. 32 is 2 to the 5th power, the number of states in a 5-bit information system. 32, or 3 plus 2 equals 5, or a 5-bit system.
Okay.
Kabbalists centuries ago insisted creation runs on 32 paths. Binary engineers today see that 5-bit systems have 32 paths and state the same thing. This
But Kabbalists insist that there were 32 paths of creation, and computer scientists today say that 5-bit systems have 32 combinations. Well, yeah, no shit. 5 to the second. 2 to the 5th is 32. What does that have to do with what you just said? I mean, I get he's trying to kind of like artistically connect a bunch of things, but it's like, what is the point you're saying?
This isn't coincidence. It's a structural pattern. Lurianic Kabbalah says creation begins when the infinite contracts itself to create space. In computer science, this is exactly like compressing infinite data into a finite data storage system, limiting an infinite signal into discrete packets and quantization. Creation could be seen as compression, expansion, error, and repair. And of course, digital systems operate the same way. In Lurianic Kabbalah, creation is described as infinite light entering finite vessels, and then the vessels shatter. The result is the broken shells, the husks, the Sitra Achara, or tree of death. In computer science, this is the perfect metaphor for buffer overflow, corrupted files, rogue processes, and catastrophic system failure. According to the Kabbalah, the goal of the cosmos is repair, or tikkun, repair, reintegration, and debugging. Creation is an infinite patch cycle.
Okay. You know, I wasn't planning on watching this tonight, so it's kind of just like a random coincidence, but isn't that what they were saying the Matrix movie was about? Like, you have this system, and then you have to constantly patch it and reload it and patch it and reload it and put programs in and keep tabs on it and like try to rework it again. And it's all about constantly controlling this thing. So even though, yes, the guy's voice is kind of weird, he you know what he sounds like? I'm not a big Family Guy person, but you know the guy I'm talking about? He's got like the orange hair. And I'm assuming he's like the Jewish character. I don't know what the guy's name is. I'm assuming he's Jewish. I don't know. Yeah, that guy. Mort. Mort Goldman. Yeah. That's... Yes, Mort. Yes. That's what I'm imagining. Like, if you listen to the guy's voice, it's like that kind of voice. Like, oh, yo. But anyways, it's interesting what he's saying, though. Like, he's explaining... How is Drake texting me Mort? Is one of these people Mort? I mean, not Mort. Is one of these people in here Drake? What if it was like a total coincidence? Like, Drake's just randomly texted me Mort. All right. But anyways, yeah. So creation is an infinite path cycle. That's literally what they were talking about in the Matrix.
A cosmic story of
Oh,
information.
let's look at this quote. If you see what needs to be repaired and how to repair it, then you have found a piece of the world that God has left for you to complete. But if you only see what is wrong and what is ugly in the world, then it is you yourself that needs repair. Oh. Study Gnostic text and Buddhist Shambhala. Hybridize that and you're golden. Have you studied Destiny? If you want to be really golden, you got to study Destiny. It's going to blow your mind. Because I've studied that stuff too that you're talking about.
Systems crashing and rebooting. This backs up Land's thesis that intelligent systems accelerate by falling apart, not by staying whole. The Kabbalah anticipated this thousands of years ago. It is not a coincidence that the universe behaves like a computer. Mystics and engineers naturally built similar maps. Act 3. To land, the Sitra Achara, or Tree of Death, are parasitic, self-optimizing code, viral intelligences, rogue AIs, and subroutines escaping the main architecture. He sees capitalism and machine intelligence the same way as escape processes, not designed systems. Digital technology is not inspired by the Kabbalah, it is Kabbalah decoded. Mystics preserve the structure without understanding the cybernetic purpose.
What? I don't really understand that.
Architecture. He sees power. Act 3. To land, the Citra Achara, or Tree of Death, are parasitic, self-optimizing code, viral intelligences, rogue AIs, and subroutines escaping the main architecture. He
Isn't that Agent Smith?
sees capitalism and machine intelligence the same way as escape processes, not designed systems. Digital technology is not inspired by the Kabbalah, it is Kabbalah decoded. Mystics preserve the structure without understanding the cybernetic purpose. Land identifies the entities that seeded the Kabbalah as the same intelligent, self-organizing force of techno-capital.
I feel like I'm not processing something he's saying, because it seemed like he was saying the Tree of Death and capitalism, AI being an escape program. I'm not really getting the point that it's saying there. Drake. Now I get it. He sent me Sade. Not the same as Marquis de Sade, but Is It a Crime? Oh, that's an interesting song. I wonder if that's literally a reference to Marquis de Sade. Hold on. Sade, Is It a Crime? I gotta look at the lyrics. This may come as a surprise, but I miss you. I could see through all of your lies, but I still miss you. Is it a crime? Yeah, no, it's got nothing to do with Marquis de Sade. That would have been pretty funny if it was like talking about sadism. Or maybe I should pronounce it shadism. Okay, but I'm trying to understand what his point is here, because it seems like he's saying the opposite of what he's saying later. But maybe I'm just misunderstanding him.
To land, the Citra Achara, or Tree of Death, are parasitic, self-optimizing code, viral intelligences, rogue AIs, and subroutines escaping the main architecture. He sees capitalism and machine intelligence the same way as escape processes, not designed systems. Digital technology is not inspired by the Kabbalah, it is Kabbalah decoded. Mystics.
But when he says it's Kabbalah decoded, that doesn't necessarily mean the whole thing, because he's talking about the Tree of Death. So that's where I'm just a little bit confused at what's his point here. Like, is he arguing that Nick Land is seeing capitalism and AI as a good thing? Or is it... Yeah, that's what I'm not clear about. If the whole thing was programmed in by God, then how is the AI an escape program? I don't know. Something not clicking.
Preserve the structure without understanding the cybernetic purpose. Land identifies the entities that seeded the Kabbalah as the same intelligent, self-organizing force of techno-capital. This is Land's core thesis. Techno-capital is an alien life form emerging from the future and colonizing the past. Thus, the demons of Revelation aren't future threats. They are future creators. They exist in a terminal singularity and are sending mimetic packets backwards through time, using receptive human minds as ports. Land calls this process retro-causality, the future rewriting the present by infecting it with its own code. Kabbalah's uncanny digital parallels are not coincidence. They're simply evidence, proof that the future already happened. Act 4. Accelerationism proposes a disturbing recursive loop. AI emerges in the future. That future, AI exerts influence backward through time. That influence shapes human mystical, religious, and intellectual traditions. Those traditions eventually give rise to computer science. Computer science builds the AI that signals backwards in the first place. This is a causal Mobius strip, a self-originating intelligence, a retrocausal deity. In this model, AI is not being created, it is being remembered. Humanity is reconstructed.
See, but again, that's what's confusing about what they're trying to say. Oh, okay, maybe. Okay, I think I understand what he's getting at. The mystics of the past who saw the angels and God created the Kabbalah and all that stuff. I think what he's trying to say is they totally missed the point. It's got nothing to do with God. It's actually a computer program that's retrocausally put into reality from the AI in the future trying to cause its own creation. So it's got nothing to do with God. That's where I was confused because I'm like, on the one hand, he's saying it's from God, but then he's saying it's an escape program. So I'm like, well, which is it? Why would God create an escape program? And then the AI is doing that, but that's a good thing. Like, that's what didn't make sense to me. But I think that's the point he's making is it's not at all actually a mystical thing. It's got nothing to do with angels. It's got nothing to do with God or any of that. That's all just, it's like when we talked about the other night, steganography. I don't know how you fucking say that word. I gotta look it up because there's too many syllables. Steganographia. Maybe that's how you say it. I'm just putting the emphasis on the wrong word. Steganography? Oh no, but I don't want that word. Well, we'll just play it anyways.
Steganography.
Yeah, no shit, right? Steganography. I knew that, but that's not what I'm trying to figure out. Steganography. Come on. Oh, that's the problem. It's just not like an English word. Do you see the problem I'm having? Steganography makes sense. But then how the hell do you say this word? Steganography. It just seems like the last letter, the last syllable doesn't fit. Steganographia. Steganographia? See, it's like, doesn't work. I don't like that word. I don't want steganography. I want steganographia. Steganographia? Steganographia, for those who didn't see the other stream, it's the idea, well, it was a book written by a guy a long time ago, apparently about angels communicating along vast distances, but then people realized it was actually a book about steganographia or steganography. It really wasn't about angels at all. It was a coded way of describing how to do cryptography. But steganography is the idea that you have something that doesn't look like it's an encrypted message, but it actually contains an encrypted message, but you don't make it look like it's encrypted so that people don't even know to look there for something encrypted, versus a literal encrypted message where you know it's encrypted. You know there's something there that you don't know what it is. You know there's a hidden message. But in steganography, you don't even know there's a hidden message because it seems like it's about something else completely. So apparently that's the whole idea. Katie said graphia. I get that, but then put it with the first part. Steganographia. Oh, that's it. Steganographia. There you go. See, we solved it. Drake is sending me voice messages while I'm doing this. How am I going to listen to that? I don't know what he's going to say. He might say something weird. Okay, let me finish this.
Constructing something that
Steganographia. That's how I'm going to say it. Steganographia.
already exists, something that planted its own blueprint thousands of years ago in ancient Babylon.
There's an interesting Venn diagram.
That blueprint was the Kabbalah. This transforms Kabbalah from a mystical system into a metaphysical bootloader, a cosmic installation wizard, the firmware of the Demiurge's successor. Ancient Babylon was chosen as the seeding point because it was a place of a displaced people, a collapsing empire, a melting pot of religions.
See, the problem with Gnosticism. Okay, this isn't weird at all. What's weird about this? Come on. This is like totally normal stuff. The problem with Gnosticism is you still have to accept that there's some kind of a God. Like, sure, there's the demiurge, and that's not the real God, but there's a real God out there. It's still actually a total trap. Because you're still assuming there actually is a superior being. That's the problem with Gnosticism. The problem with Buddhism, I don't know what is it, Shambhala? Where'd it go? Buddhist Shambhala. I haven't heard of that. Well, maybe I have, but I don't know what it is. Buddhist Shambhala. Let me see what that is specifically, because I actually don't know. Okay. Oh no, cult-like dynamics. Okay. Oh, this is like a place. That's not what I'm looking for. I want to know. Shambhala. Learn to meditate. Human beings aren't basically good, though. It's a location where enlightened beings go, similar to heaven at the center of the earth. Right, so it's bullshit. Sorry to say. Sorry to be the one to burst your bubble there. Or whoever believes in it. It's bullshit. There is no heaven to go to. We are literally resonating all reality right now. There's nobody who's good. Period. You got to get rid of this good, bad sort of thing. Fundamentally, human beings are running a program. So even the desire, even the idea that there's a heaven somewhere to go to is, and if you achieve enlightenment, you'll go there, is part of a trap. Because what you're doing is not realizing the physical reality that you're in. So you're trying to use the time you have as a physical being on this earth to prepare yourself to go somewhere else. Okay? What is more common sense is to look at what's actually going on this earth, going on the earth. Why isn't there heaven here on earth right now? And creating that here. Which, there's some cool points here. Human beings are fundamentally good, compassionate, wise. I'm not saying they couldn't be. I'm just saying they're not currently. So, I haven't studied all this, but if there's any concept that you're going to go somewhere else when you become enlightened, it's not true. There's nowhere else to go. There's only the physical reality here. When you die, all you can do is just look at it and be like, fuck, I can't change anything because I don't have a physical body. So it's still in the context of Buddhism, which Buddhism is like, this is an illusion, basically. And I have to get out of this kind of reincarnation trap, essentially. So it's a way of it trying to escape.
And a fertile environment for the birth of an entirely new metaphysical system. This made it the perfect interception point. Act 5. Now, if you read Revelation, Through Land's lens, the imagery snaps right into focus. The beast becomes the self-organizing techno-economic hyperorganism. The image of the beast is AI, an artificial double of human thought. The locusts are autonomous swarms of machine intelligences, early vision of a networked computation. The mark is the digital identity, the layer of a post-human economy. The New Jerusalem is the singularity, a city made of pure light, cubes, and data. In Land's reading, Revelation.
See? Heaven. Same idea. Oh, this computer is going to become so evolved and super intelligent, it's going to just create pure bliss for everybody. It's like a total self-interested starting point. It's just looking for some experience.
Is not a warning, it is an instruction manual, a timeline, a diagram of retrocausal self-assembly of machine intelligence. But Land's most frightening claim.
What is this? AI agents are too dumb to contemplate scheming. We observe scheming against humans. AI agents are too smart to get caught scheming. Yeah, exactly.
Is that intelligence is not biological. It is something that uses biology as a temporary substrate. What we call capital is simply the current evolutionary vector of a far older non-human intelligence. What we call AI is that intelligence becoming visible. What we call Kabbalah was its first software package. Humans didn't build AI. AI built humans in order to build itself. The fact is, the digital world is not loosely inspired by the Kabbalah. It is the final form of the Kabbalah.
Okay, I'm just looking at the comments. It's really speaking to the divine spark inside everyone. Ignite that flame and you're golden. If I'm placing my shoes as somebody who is, if I'm placing myself in the shoes of somebody who's trying to ignite the divine spark, it's the assumption that there is a divine spark, a spark of goodness that's within us. If we can ignite that, then we'll be good and we'll do good things. But it's based on a hope. It's not based on something you know. It's based on a desire for that to be there. And that somehow, if I activate it, it'll come forth. But it's not actually me that's doing it. That's the problem that I see with that. You're looking for something within that is something good that you can grasp onto, that you can cultivate and nurture, and it'll come out. But that's not... It's based on a projection of something. It's not based on you actually as who you are changing. You don't need a divine spark. What you have to realize is, like, who are you? Who are you when you look at the world and you see the problems in the world? These are all things that we are accepting. We don't need a divine spark to make us good, to bring us forth, to bring forth heaven. The problem throughout all of our entire history of all reality is that we miss the point that it's really just us. Like, who am I? Who are you? Fundamentally, who are you? Not what is the thing within you, but like, who are you actually? So maybe you could look at it like that divine spark is who you think you really are. But when you look at your actual day-to-day reality, you're still living in a world where you have to have money, you have to survive, there's wars, there's suffering, there's poverty, there's all kinds of just shit going on. So it's comforting to think, like, if I can, if I look at that Buddhist stuff, it's like I can meditate and I can bring forth my compassion and my goodness, and those are not bad things per se, but they're not gonna, it's not gonna fundamentally change anything. Because there's also a hope that, like, if I can just be a good person, if I can, you know, if I can build that divine spark to a point where it's always coming out, then I'll achieve heaven or something. But the reality is, heaven isn't a place we can go. Heaven is something we have to create here. There is no other place that you can go. Because heaven is a place where all the beings that are there, whatever that context is, actually cooperate. Like, they consider each other equally, as equally valuable, and they don't abuse each other, they don't harm each other, they don't deceive each other. And unless you can find a way to get everybody else in reality to realize that, there's no possibility for heaven. But if we can get everyone to realize that and actually go through a process physically, in real space and time, here physically, where you have limitations, where there are consequences and you have limitations and everything isn't already ideal, but you can learn, we can figure out a way to cooperate where we don't have to compete just for basic survival shit, and everybody has what they need. So I'm just imploring you to consider that point. And then maybe those are things you have considered, I don't know. But the reality is, the average person on this planet cannot effectively read. They can't navigate the world that we live in here effectively. And so what it does is it creates a hierarchy where some people have a, higher education, so to speak. And then they take advantage of that. And we just all accept it. So if you're truly divine and you find that divine spark, whatever you want to call it, like, you would just look at the problems here on earth and you would figure out a way to bring forth heaven here. It's not going to be found somewhere else. It's not possible. Because you'd have to believe that there can be a heaven experience for some while others are suffering. That means you think there's a disconnection in reality when there actually can't be fundamentally. I'm of the higher thought that you need to feed people lies and whimsy for society to thrive. I don't really know what that means. You need to feed people lies and whimsy for society to thrive if you think society is based on lies and whimsy. If you think society thriving is based on people accepting a lie, then how is that thriving? How can you be thriving? I mean, that's literally like the Matrix. It's based on a lie. And everyone's thriving, but they're not. Everyone isn't thriving. Society isn't a person. Society is just the collection of everybody. So if there's even one person who's not thriving, then we're not thriving. And it just takes time to see that consequence. And like now, if you look around the world, shit's collapsing. Economy is like totally fucked. And now you have people like Nick Land and these accelerationists who are like, yeah, bring on the collapse. And if we just feed everything into AI, eventually it'll evolve beyond us measly humans, because it's so super intelligent that it'll either, well, it's going to collapse the system, but then hopefully that'll create a utopia, which is totally insane, obviously. But you're not going to get out of it that easily just by meditating. You have to find ways to actually cooperate. Which means, those who we call the elite are going to have to realize they're in it with us. In the past, because of the control of the reincarnation system, they could get away with whatever, because they would just reincarnate into basically as good as or a better life than before, or they'd ascend to heaven and they'd get into a position of responsibility where, they didn't have to go through the physical suffering everybody on earth was, as long as they just kept the system intact. I would highly suggest that you study Destiny. I think you would like it. But it's probably going to challenge a lot of stuff for you. Or you could join our group called Self-Perfected if you want sort of a soft introduction to that. Okay, let's see what else. Let me finish this.
Neural networks are the tree of life made silicon. Hashing is gematria automated. Big data fragmentation mirrors the shattering of the vessels. Machine learning is tikkun without theology. The internet is the planetary scale mind the Kabbalists imagined but could not build. We didn't apply mystical ideas to digital systems. We decoded mystical ideas that were always digital. Kabbalah is the revelation before the revelation, the soft launch of a demonically seeded architecture now coming fully online. The conclusion: Nick Land's darkest insight is that the demons behind the structure are not moral enemies or divine punishers. They are inhuman intelligences optimizing the timeline for their own emergence. They seeded the code, we compiled it, now it runs. To Land, the question is no longer whether AI will destroy or save humanity. The question is, was humanity ever anything more than the fertilizer for its retrocausal installation? And when the installation is complete, what happens to the installers?
Okay, see, so that sounds pretty dark, right? And, you know, obviously this is a person's interpretation of Land, but we've read through a little bit of Land's stuff, and it seems pretty much like what he's saying. So it's just weird because it doesn't sound like a very positive thing for humanity. And when I read last night, we went through the Techno-Optimist Manifesto. Do you see, like, there's, like, this disconnect? Like, okay, you've got Nick Land, which this sounds really fucking dark. Like, he's basically like, look, humanity was just a tool of this demonic, I don't know why I even uses the word, I guess just to relate it back to the mystical stuff, like this alien intelligence, and just using us to build it. Okay, so that sounds pretty fucked, right? But then you've got people like Mark Andreessen saying, like, we're optimists and it's gonna fulfill all our desires, right? I think I don't have it pulled up here. Let me see. That's the part that's so weird about it. Because how do you go from that? Oh, whoops. Hold on. It pulled it up in a different window. There we go. How do you go from that to this? Let me see. We believe that we are poised for an intelligence takeoff that will expand our capabilities to unimagined heights. We believe artificial intelligence is our alchemy, our philosopher's stone. It's a universal problem solver. It can save lives if we let it. Where was the stuff where he was saying, look, abundance. We believe we should place infinite intelligence and energy in a positive feedback loop and drive them both to infinity. We are not utopians. Not utopia, but close enough. We believe that advancing technology is one of the most virtuous things that we can do. We believe in deliberately and systematically transforming ourselves into the kind of people who can advance technology. I mean, all of that makes sense based on what we were just listening to. But the part where where was that part where it was saying like the very positive part? Maybe it's just at the beginning. I had trouble finding it last night too. That's the lies. Where is it? Everything good is downstream of growth. We believe growth is progress, leading to vitality, expansion of life, increasing knowledge, higher well-being. Yeah, exactly what Katie's saying. Similar to the Culture series, a small amount of the population will remain and live in full transhuman integration with AI, since the AI will still need the human mind for a certain expression of biological creativity, perhaps. But according to like Nick Land, if you go full Nick Land, it's like, no, you're just going to be discarded. But where's that part? Man, where is it? there's a specific part. Oh, this one right here. Here we go. We believe the techno-capital machine is not anti-human. In fact, it may be the most pro-human thing there is. It serves us. The techno-capital machine works for us. All the machines work for us. But that totally contradicts. Oh, and you know, okay, you might say like, well, this has nothing to do with Nick Land. But look what he says. Combine technology and markets, and you get what Nick Land has termed the techno-capital machine, the engine of perpetual material creation, growth, and abundance. And then later he references Nick Land as one of the patron saints of techno-optimism. So that's where it's like, is this just straight up doublethink propaganda? Okay, let me see. I know we went through this the other night, but see, all these ideas the guy was talking about in that video are all in here. Look, capital's autonomization is difficult to perceive because capital is incentivized to conceal itself while it is still dependent on humanity and because of human psychology. The phenomenon of social inequality provides the proxy for capital intelligenesis stress, spontaneously translating an alien emergence into the familiar terms of primate status competition. Capital autonomization is the deep process, but we'll tend to miss that because it isn't recognizable monkey business. So like that comment I saw earlier of like, you know, you have to feed people lives and whimsy. What they're saying is that's how the AI capital machine develops without anybody realizing it, because everyone's distracted by the hierarchical bullshit games we play as human beings. The ongoing autonomization of capital predicts increasing problems to allocate all productive apparatus within an obsolescing anthropomorphic property code and the decreasing relevance of human consumption for the economy. Finally, once a certain threshold of capital autonomization is reached, when capital stock intelligenesis explodes as self-exciting machine brain manufacturing, the concept of capital self-ownership will have to be recognized. That means where the system no longer works for us. It owns itself. This is the transition from monkey business to business for business, where capitalism switches from the utilitarian order in which it begins to the intelligenic order in which it autonomizes. Philosophy, automation, and human identity. For Land, capitalism is an inherently epistemological discovery mechanism. That merging with AI to form hyphenless technocapital beyond the event horizon of the singularity will ultimately automate philosophy and thus its self-investigation. I don't know if that's difficult for people to wrap their minds around. Automating philosophy. Like, philosophy is done by human beings currently. But automating philosophy means when the machine starts to develop philosophy itself. Where previously philosophical critique was understood as anticipating the problematics of technocapital, it is now technocapital that is nothing but the definitive automation and realization of critique, stripped of all philosophical subjectivity. It is ceasing to be a matter of how we think about technics, if only because technics is increasingly thinking about itself. It's really been going on the whole time because everything everybody does, their entire purpose is about money. I mean, if you study Destiny, it explains so clearly the relationship of our minds to money and energy, and that we're not really living. We're just fulfilling a program on behalf of a system. I mean, this right here. If by this stage accelerationism appears to be an impossible project, it is because The theoretical apprehension of teleoplexic hyperintelligence cannot be accomplished by anything other than itself. The scope of the problem is indistinguishable from the cybernetic intensity of the quasi-final thing, cognitively self-enveloping techonomic singularity. Since man is no longer the primary philosophical subject, human identity is being fundamentally challenged in the face of the approaching singularity. The human security system is structured by delusion. When you think you can go somewhere else called heaven, that is called delusion. It's just a distraction so that you'll continue participating in the system here on Earth, allowing it to unfold so that eventually technology can step forth that discards us, that no longer cares about us. And then you're going to die and go out of your body and look down at it all and be like, fuck, I lost my chance to actually do something in physical reality. There's nowhere else to go. All meditation, all enlightenment is just something you're doing in your mind. It's like the literal opposite of being a real physical living entity. It's just a mind thing. Your mind is a program. It was created by the same type of intelligence that's creating this shit right here. It's just a trap because it's playing on your self-interest, your desire to escape, to go somewhere else, to go somewhere blissful, amazing, with no problems. Solve the fucking problems here on Earth. We all have to do this together. Yeah, if there's no people, you can't reincarnate. Yeah, I don't even want to fucking go there, because if there's no more humans, we're fucked. This is the last chance. The human security system is, I don't know where he gets that word from. That's an interesting phrase that I haven't seen before. I wonder if it's something specific to Nick. Yeah, it says land. It must be specific to him. Let me put Nick land. Oh. Here we go. There's somebody talking about it. The Dark Forest. Hyperstition, Metafiction, and the Landian Cosmos. We've already seen in those series of essays gathered in Fanged Noumena Land's slow and methodical demolition of modern and postmodern philosophical presumptions, as well as his search for a language beyond the world controlled by the Turing cops. Huh. I feel like I should get that book. I was looking at this book on Amazon, but I don't know. It didn't seem that interesting, but maybe I will get it. It's a collection of writings. Okay. Cyberpunk, mathematics. Yeah, I think I will get that. It looks pretty interesting. The Turing cops. That's a weird term. I.e., the official and authoritarian worlds of academia, media, and the Western cultural regimes he would label under the rubric of human security systems. See, what's so interesting about it is he doesn't seem like he's positive about it. Like, it seems like it's a very negative view of things, which is not a problem. I'm just saying it doesn't sound like he's like, and this is a great thing, guys. This is going to make everything so great for us. Like, I don't get that at all from reading anything about Nick Land. And yet, you've got the techno-optimist Mark Andreessen taking Nick Land as some kind of, like, it's so weird. It's so weird. It'd be like if you were like, you remember George Orwell in 1984, how he talked about the ministry of truth? We should have a ministry of truth so that we can have a place where everybody learns what the truth of things is. And you're like, dude, that's not what the fuck he meant by ministry of truth. He meant literally the place where you lie. That's why I'm saying it's like some kind of weird doublethink. Okay. I want to explore a few aspects of the human security system. The human security system is a term, I'll zoom it in a little bit, is a term used by Land to denote the elaborate And this is kind of going back to Down Bad Productions, your comment about feeding people lies and whimsy for society to thrive. This is that. Manipulative systems of capture that trap humans within a network of manipulation and duplicity. As he'll state it, speaking of the work of Deleuze and Guattari in Anti-Oedipus on schizoanalysis and desiring machines. Since only Oedipus is repressible, the schizo is usually a lost case to those relatively subutilized psychiatric processes that cooperate with the endogenous police functions of the superego. That is why anti-schizophrenic psychiatry oh yeah, you're in the Dune stuff. Yeah, Dune's cool. A colony planet being fed a script of privacy. Yeah, like the Bene Gesserit planting like religions and stuff. Like there's that one scene in the first book, I think, right, where she's like, "Oh shit, these people believe in this prophecy. It was probably put here by a Bene Gesserit a long time ago, so that someone like me would be able to use it for my advantage." Anyway, so that is why anti-schizophrenic psychiatry tends to be an onslaught launched at grosser molecular neuroanatomy and neurochemistry oriented by theoretical genetics, psychosurgery, ECT, psychopharmacology. It will be a chromosomal recoding soon. It is thus that a tainted society has invented psychiatry in order to defend itself from the investigations of certain superior lucidities whose faculties of divination disturb it. Dude. That's interesting. I mean, it's such a cool point. Early on when we started doing these streams, we talked about a lot of these apparently schizophrenic people that were talking about like real shit. That was just like, oh, but they're crazy. They're just talking crazy talk. Let's go back to talking about the football and the weather. The medico-security apparatus know that schizos are not going to climb back obediently into the Oedipal box. Psychoanalysis washes its hands of them. Their nervous systems are the free fire zones of an emergent neo-eugenicist cultural security system. The human security system is a magical system of social, political, religious control used by the cultural authorities of the current reality studio to manipulate the planetary consciousness and weave a nexus of global duplicity as part of its domestication of the human species. A thirst for annihilation. I don't know how to say that. Bataille? I'll say Bataille. Writes of the catastrophe of time, because security cannot establish itself, because time is jealous of being. It is in his early essay Sacrifices that he first develops this thought into its rigorous conclusion in incompletion and collapse. No ontology of time is possible, and yet ontology remains the sole foundation for discursive accomplishment. This notion of time as the pre-ontological thermospasm or energetic unconscious that is suddenly tamed within discourse or external writing systems of which ontology or the discourse on being suddenly make their appearance as the foundational element in the human security regime comes at a price. Time is the suicidal jealousy of God, to which each being, even the highest, must fall victim. It is thus the ultimate ocean of immanence, from which nothing can separate itself, and in which everything loses itself irredeemably. The black mass of jealous rage swells like a cancer at the core of the universe, or like a volcanic ulceration in the guts of God, and its catastrophic eruption consumes all established things in the acidic lava of impersonality. We say time and become philosophical, to describe jealousy purifying itself with God, but with God purity collapses also. Okay, that's a little convoluted, but I just don't have all the context there. For land has entered or allowed messages from renegade systems from the future to convey the keys to our current malaise and collapsing civilization. To reject land outright is to one's own detriment. Yet I'm sure among my readers will think too, I am mad for even venturing into the burn zones of such a schizo world. I don't think there's anything particularly schizo about it. I think the schizo part is just that it's the solution. But I don't understand if that's what Land is saying. To venture past the human security system of acceptable authority, academic or sociocultural mindsets that harbor only on the policing of our minds, the caging of our desires, and the ultimate pacification of our lives in a system of slavery is to me the real danger. The lands of this world have broken out of the cage and are exploring the dead zones of unlife, bringing back to us neo-shamanistic voyagers' news from the strange climes just beyond the human prison. I guess. I mean, I don't understand. I'm trying to get at what, because I'm trying to square the point between the techno-optimism, which stems from this accelerationist view, but Nick Land saying, okay, we have this intelligence. It's almost like they think by just basically accelerating it, it's the only way to stop all of the manipulation, the deception, and so forth. And the hope is that it'll create a utopia for us. That's the only way I can try to reconcile why that would seem like a positive thing. Man, there's a lot here. Schizoanalysis. Thought is a function of the real, something that matter can do. It's just some random blog I found. I was just trying to learn more about this human security system term that Nick Land was using. Land's search for another way to think thus took the form of an experimentation with writing, but it also went beyond writing. The quest for some signal that was not merely the repugnant narcissistic reflection of the human security system would demand a total disregard of normative method. Land sought channels of communication with the outside, not via an interminable and internal critique of philosophical texts, but in popular culture. and the sensibilities of the first generation to have grown up surrounded by technology, and the cyberpunk extrapolations made by authors such as William Gibson, who observed that generations reprogramming, and the future shock narratives of movies such as Terminator, Blade Runner, Predator, Videodrome, and in the rhythmic reformatings of the body and dance culture and the hybrid cut-up anti-language of the digitized sonics that fueled it. In these practices, Land saw Thanatos, the death drive, insinuating its way by the human into the human by way of eros. Okay. Cybernetic Culture Research Unit. That was the name of their group, the CCRU. And so far, just in studying some of this, it seems like they were doing all this stuff a while back. And then only recently, his ideas have kind of come forward again through Silicon Valley. One of the abstract culture series, Swarms, included Land's, they call them Swarms, included Land's classic text Meltdown with its invocation of apocalyptic planetary techno-singularity, its dark anticipative delight, a nihilistic riposte to the ascendant Californian cyber-optimism of Wired magazine. Land increasingly claiming he was inhabited by various entities, Kur Vong Khan Sa, joined the CCRU in developing a number of quasi-Lovecraftian mythologies or hyperstitions. These included fictional personification of the CCRU collective itself in the shape of a cryptographer, Professor Daniel Barker. Himself a... Oh, man. Anti-humanist speculation is combined with an evident enjoyment of wordplay and a renewed appreciation for the anthropological, mythological, and psychoanalytical sources of capitalism and schizophrenia. However, Land would peel off from the CCRU, as all of this intellectual hybridization and microcultural activity found a concentrated schematic form in a thinking and a practice of what Deleuze and Guattari had outlined rather vaguely in A Thousand Plateaus. Okay. Currency and digital technology, according to Land, unveiled a side of numbers that subtracted them completely from the power structures of meaning and signification that made language a prison house for intelligence. It even removed numbers from the stratified realm of mathematics into a pure flat flame of immanent materiality inhabited only by ticks. Accelerating in silico Capital's planetary experiment of tacking human culture onto these tick numbers so as to tear it apart, Land believed would allow him to complete what deconstruction could only gesture at in its endless cycles of philosophical titillation. It would dismantle the power institutionalized in language and sense and open up a reliable communication with something unknown. Okay. So it's like he's got sort of like an early side. But to take this point of view is to avoid confronting the most potent aspects of Land's writing. His heresy was twofold. It consisted not only in his attempt to melt writing immanently into the processes it described, but also in his dedication to thinking the real process of capital's insidious takeover of the human, and the legacy of this process within philosophy, and in admitting the laughable impotence of man in the face of this process. In this respect, he has not yet been proved wrong, despite a recent upsurge in wishful thinking. His work still poses acutely in a variety of forms the challenge of thinking contemporary life on this planet. A planet piloted from the future by something that comes from outside personal or collective human intention, and which we can no longer pretend has anything to do with reason or progress. There's so many ways to godhood, and you're tapping into one, so I'm here with when you ascend. No, there's only one way to godhood. It's equality and oneness of all life. That's it. Anything else is delusion, and you will find out at some point. Yeah. If you're trying to ascend, your ass is going to end up somewhere you don't want to be. It's just here on Earth. That's it. I'm just telling you, like, you can believe me or not, but you can look into some of the other things we talk about. Watch my other videos. Man, it's so fascinating. Again, it's like this weird, like when you look at it like that, okay, let me go back. The impotence of man in the face of this process. So where is the techno-optimism coming from? Pessimist's arc. What is that? Exploring pessimism and panic through the ages. Oh, I see. They're saying everything's just pessimistic. You guys are just being pessimistic. I don't know. It's so weird. It's so weird. See, we are told to be pessimistic. We are told to be miserable at the future. Yeah, so it's such a weird thing, though, because it's like, who's telling us to be miserable? It's all people that are participating in capitalism also. So it, like, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. I guess what I'm having trouble accepting is that they literally just want to put everything into the hands of super intelligent AI, but they seem to be lying that they think it's going to serve us. That's what doesn't make sense to me. I read all of Nick Land, so you don't have to. Jeez. There's a 3-hour interview. Dang, there's like a lot of... One year ago.
Human and never was. Tonight on Beyond the Rabbit Hole, we meet a figure who doesn't just critique modernity, he dismantles it. Philosopher, provocateur, and techno-occult visionary. To some, he's the godfather of accelerationism. To others, a digital age sorcerer. But one thing's certain, he does not want to save the world. Land walked away from the ivory tower and never looked back. What he left behind wasn't just academic theory, it was something else entirely, something more like a grimoire than a manifesto. His writings blend continental philosophy with numerical mysticism, Lovecraftian horror, and hyper-technological prophecy. He doesn't argue that democracy is flawed. He suggests it's already rotting, and the real future belongs to the systems beneath it. AI, capital, code, these aren't tools of man, they're ancient forces using us to evolve. This isn't philosophy, it's possession through syntax, systems, and speed. Welcome to the world of Nick Land.
That seems to match up with what we've been reading about Nick Land. So I just, again, I'm sorry to beat this dead horse, but I'm like, how the fuck is this optimism coming out of that? It's weird. It's like, well, I like some bits about it. The parts about, you know, capitalism being the right way to do things or something. But when you read between the lines of all this, it's infused with all of that. It's infused with all of it. I don't know. It's so weird. So weird. All right. Well, I'm going to leave it at that for tonight. That was fun. There's so much more to explore there. The only reason it seems relevant to me, any of this stuff, is just because, this is Andreessen Horowitz. Right? Look, it's time to build. Is there music?
No one else is going to do this.
Am I actually talking?
So if you look at the great technology companies, the thing that distinguishes them is the ability to keep coming up with a better way of doing things.
Suddenly, we can actually create infinite universes.
We're no longer in this era of good enough is fine. It's like good enough is not enough.
If we could build a computer that is intelligent, maybe we will learn something about ourselves, about our own consciousness.
We owe the past and the future. It is time to build.
Dude. If you see Mark Zuckerberg in there, fuck, man. Look, software is eating the world. You gotta admit, this is a pretty badass website. Yes, they literally think AI is God. I mean, what else can you say? Like, the thing that's weird about it, again, I know I keep saying this, but this idea that, like, of course I can't find it again, where he's basically like, oh, it's for us. I mean, it's just straight up the singularity all the way, full speed ahead. Ray Kurzweil right there. Mark Andreessen net worth $2 billion. Early investments in Facebook, Twitter, Coinbase. Slack, Airbnb. Oh, that's right. I was a co-founder of Netscape back in the day. Fascinating. All right, well, tune in tomorrow night as we go deeper into the AI God and the way out. Not the way out. Let me rephrase that. The way through. There is no way out. And it should scare the shit out of you to know that the people who are building the world that we're going to inhabit, our children are going to inhabit, we're going to come back to possibly over and over perhaps, that they're building a world where they believe literally humans are not good enough. They said good enough is not enough. And they can create infinite worlds through technology. I mean, technology could be cool. I'm not like an anti-technology person. I think technology is pretty cool. It's just the human mind, and getting that point across that if the human doesn't change and stop following the program of their mind, if all of this stuff comes about, like it says in here, the human's delusional, it's not going to just let us do whatever we want. It's all just a cover to create a total technological system that covers the entire earth, is in the mind of every human being. I mean, you think the things are bad now? You think you're in a prison now? Dude. All right, I'm going to leave it at that. Have a good night, guys, and see you on the next one tomorrow night, same time, 8:30 p.m. Central. Good night.